Welcome back to the series. We're going to see how to dockerize MERN Stack with an example project in this episode. So I have published an article long time ago on Medium, and we're going to use the same repository that is there in that article. So first we will clone that repository and we will run that application on our local machine, and then we will install all the necessary tools such as VS Code and Docker Desktop, and we will build the Docker image and we will run the container. We will run that image as a container and see how that actually works. Okay, without much delay, let's get started on this. And let's go to this URL where I have published this article on Medium. So I have put this in the description. You can go to the Medium, and here you can actually see all the prerequisites and the example project listed. So it is a very detailed explanation with step-by-step analysis, and you can actually go through this article as well. So let's clone the repository and let's copy and let's go to the GitHub repository and see how it actually looks. And this is published exactly 2 years ago, but it still works. So let's clone that repository, and once that is cloned, you can actually import that into VS Code. And so we are maintaining two folders here. One is for front end and another is for back end. So the API is the back end, obviously, and the UI is the front end. So the UI is written in React since it's a MERN stack. So obviously that is actually written in React. So let's go to the API and install all the dependencies. Once all the dependencies are installed, let's run the command. Let's start the application. Let's go to package.json and let's see what is the command. So you can just run npm run dev, so that so there is a problem because we don't have any backend MongoDB running on our missions. That's why you will get this issue, and we will get that sorted out in a little bit. And so let's change the directory. Let's open another terminal and change the directory to the UI, and let's install all the dependencies of the UI. And once all the dependencies are installed, you can just run the command npm start so that the React application will be run. So let's start the command. Now the React project is running on port 3000, so where you can actually see the whole UI. So remember, we have a problem with the API where we don't have any MongoDB instance running on our local machine. So for that, we will use MongoDB Atlas account. So for that, we just Google MongoDB Atlas, so that will take you to the MongoDB Atlas page, home page. And so we can actually we need to create an account before we use it. So either you can sign up with Google. If you have a Google account, you can use it to log in, or you can actually create your own MongoDB Atlas account. So I'm using the Google account to log in. So you need to accept those terms of service, and then it will ask you a bunch of questions. What is the primary use of this MongoDB for you? What is the role? What is your role? And which language that you intend to use this MongoDB, like Node.js or it's a programming language, or Java, whatever. So since we are using Node.js, so we need to select Node.js, and what type of data that you want to store in this MongoDB. And so let's answer all these questions, and let's click on that next button. So once you click on that next button, you have to choose the tier, serverless, M10 dedicated, or M0. M0 is the free one. So let's choose M0, and it will take some time to get, for the cluster to create. So meanwhile, you can actually look at the security things here. So where you can create username and password, and also you can you can whitelist your IP address. So let's look at all these. And the first thing what we need to do is, since we we are going to connect to this MongoDB instance, we need a username and password. So you can you can just add username and the password, or you can auto generate the password. It's up to you. So since I want to remember my username and password, so that's why I just uh, in production this is not recommended. For this demo purpose I just created password as tester123, and let's create that user. Let's go to the next section. Since we are actually connecting to the MongoDB Atlas account through from our local machine, so we just need to select my local environment and add your IP address, or you can just add 0 0 0 0 /0, which actually um, allows from anywhere. You can connect to the MongoDB instance from anywhere, that means. And also this is also not recommended in production, so this is only for demo purpose. So once that is done, it actually, once the cluster is created, and once cluster is created, you can connect to the MongoDB instance. So there are so many ways to connect. So since we are connecting to this MongoDB instance through our Node.js application, we have to select that particular thing and take that URL, connection URL, copy that, and let's go to our code base, where if you open API and if you go to environment.env environment file, so in which we have defined Mongo connection string. So you have to replace this string, Mongo connection string, with the URL that we just copied from MongoDB Atlas account. And in place of username and password, you just need to put whatever the username and password that you created in MongoDB Atlas account. And also, since we just cloned it from a Git repository, so I named that .env to .env dev, so we just have to rename back. So when you push to Git repository, the .env files will be ignored. So that is the reason why I changed the name. So let's run it again. Still we have some problem here. I think we don't have et in the password. Let's remove that and try to connect again. Yep, now the database is connected. We are successfully connected to the database right now. And let's see, the UI is running also. So the UI is also running. Let's reload this page so that we can see the entire front end and back end working together. That's why you can actually see the list of tasks. And I'm going to create one simple task here. Yes, as soon as I submit, you can actually see that listed as well. So the entire front end and back end working together, all this data is saving into database right now. So we have seen how to run this application in local by running both front end and back end. Right now, it's time for us to get started with Docker. The first thing what we need to do is, if you install Docker, you just need to open the Docker desktop and get it running. And let's go to Docker file, in where we have multi-stage builds, where in the first stage we are building UI, in the second stage we are building API, and from those two builds we are copying the build assets in the third stage, and in the final command we are just running the API. So to understand the whole build process, let us build UI and API and see where the build assets will be saved. So for the UI we just need to run npm run build. So that will actually put all the build assets under build directory under the UI folder. And if you go to the API, if you run the same command npm run build, so we are using Webpack here to build the whole backend. So what it does is it actually bundles all the files and it produces a single or few assets. So in our case, we are going to produce only one particular file. Before that, since we have changed the Mongo connection string, we just need to put the same Mongo connection string which we have placed in .env file. We have to put that in webpackconfig.js. Since we are actually building for production, so we are putting environment equal to production before npm run build. So let's run it. Let's run the same command so that it builds for production and it takes that connection string which we just placed. So once that is built, once the build is completed, you can actually see it produces only one file, api.bundle.js, and that is placed in under dist folder. So that is how we are building front end and back end. So the same process we are actually doing in the Docker file as well. So let's go back to our article and let's copy the Docker image build command. Yeah, let's copy that and go to the terminal. So you just need to change your directory to where the Docker file is located. So once you are there, all you need to do is you just need to run this command where we are tagging this Docker image with -t with MERN Stack, and we are sending the whole context to the Docker daemon. So as soon as you run that command, the Docker will start building the whole Docker image, and as you can see, it is building UI and API parallelly. And also we can actually see the which task is running currently. And so it is always important to have multi-stage builds when you are building the Docker image for production, because there are several advantages to it. Some of them are the reduced image size, improved security, simplified build process, faster builds, optimized for CI/CD pipelines if you are running this or building this Docker image through CI/CD, and it is easy for the Docker image to be maintained, and smaller attack surface because you are actually removing all your dev dependencies from the final build, so that you don't have to, I mean, there won't be any larger surface attack. And also there is some clear separation of environments as well, because we're actually separating the builds, and we are only copying what is needed for production, so that way. And we have a lot of flexibility as well, as we are separating all the builds. So there are so many advantages. The primary focus of multi-stage builds is lesser surface area to attack, and also smaller images. So now we have built the whole Docker image, and let's see how we can run this Docker image as a container. So if you list Docker images, now you can actually see the image that we just built, and the same thing appears on the Docker desktop as well. Now let's go to other section in the article where we are running the image as a container. Let's copy that command and put it here. So what we are doing here is we are running with the detached mode, and also we are exposing that port to the host network port 3080, and we are naming this container as app, and in the last we are just passing the Docker image name. So once you run it, you can actually see with the docker ps command you can list the containers, running containers. So the container is up and running, and we can actually see it on the Docker desktop as well. If you click on that link, and you can actually see that whole app running inside Docker, and we can access it through localhost 80, as we are exposing that particular port 80 to the host network, and also we are mapping it. And you can go through the whole Docker desktop and you can remove or start or stop uh, through Docker Desktop as well instead of commands. So it's always better to understand the commands, what actually these commands does. So let's go inside the Docker image with the Docker exec command, where we can actually see the whole file system. So as you can see, we are placing the build UI build under UI/build, and also we are placing API bundle.js at the root. So we can see that. So you can navigate the file system, and you can understand what are the files that we put from our local machine into the Docker file system. So let's stop the container. You can actually stop the container with Docker stop, whatever the name that you have given. It will take some time to stop the container, but once it stops, you can remove it with the Docker rm command. You can do the same thing through the Docker desktop. As I said earlier, it is always better to understand the commands and what each command does by running in the terminal or command prompt if you are using Windows. So when you stop the container, you no longer access that application on localhost 80. So let's remove the image as well. You can remove the images with the docker rmi command. And once it is removed, you no longer list those images as well. So it's always better to clean up the resources once you are done with running the Docker. So thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.